Hello, it's week 2 of Finder Summit, our new Friday Instagram live show here with Summit Coffee, where we chat with different people each week that are living their best lives, pursuing the Finder Summit motto to the fullest. And so last week we chatted with Brian, our CEO, and had a good conversation about running marathons, goals, lots of cool stuff. And so this week we're excited to have Chris Clunie on the show. Chris is the athletic director at Davidson College, and I personally am super excited because I mentioned this last week, but I swam at Davidson all 4 years, and so it was really cool to work firsthand with him. Ooh, here's Chris now. Let's see, let's invite him. Chris. Let's see. Technology issues. Unable to join. Hang on for a second while we try to get Chris in here. But a little bit about him. He is a Davidson alumni as well. He played basketball at Davidson from 2002 to 2006 before getting the Watson Fellowship and traveling abroad for a year and continuing to study basketball. And then for 10 years after that, he was working with the NBA before ultimately coming back to Davidson College in the summer of 2018, which he's been there ever since. He's awesome. He came in two years into my career at Davidson. What is happening? Why is Chris unable to join video? Yeah, and he totally reinvigorated the athletic department. It was super cool to be there when he came in. It made me feel like I was part of something bigger because he kind of turned the athletic department around, and I think I got him. Totally turned the athletic department around. Here he is. Hi, Chris.
Hey, what's up, Olivia?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
I was just saying that it was really cool to have you come in halfway through my experience at Davidson College. And so I got to kind of experience the athletic department before you and after you. And it was cool to see the new energy that got brought in and like the changes that you brought to the program. Made me feel like I was like part of the whole athletic department opposed to just my individual team, which was a cool transition.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you felt that way. I think it's important for scholar athletes to feel a sense of shared ownership with their scholar athlete experience. So that was definitely a priority of mine my first 2 years.
Yeah. So I've got a couple questions for you. I'm pretty psyched to be talking to you today. First, can you just like give a little background on what you do as an AD, like what that involves and what an average day in the life of Chris Clunie looks like?
All right, well, I'll do pre-COVID because that's probably
Yeah, I have questions about post-COVID.
honestly, the way that I explain it to people, Olivia, is my job is like a pizza pie. It has different slices, and based upon you know how big or important that specific role or responsibility is at any given time, right? So, there's an administrative part, and just being a direct report and having a senior staff and overseeing a staff of 100 people, including coaches, staff, and then almost 500 scholar athletes. There's a fundraising piece to it, right? Philanthropy, and working with alums and parents to give back, support our programs. There's a business development piece, working on outside partnerships and corporate sponsorships to generate outside revenue. There's a compliance piece through the NCAA. There's a misconduct piece, working with campus safety and just making sure that our scholar athletes are following the rules. So like there are a number of slices to the pie, and so any given day is really different based upon the time of season. I know my first year going from winter sports to spring sports was a beast. Like it just caught me off guard because it's early March and you literally have your sport, men's, women's swimming and diving, like finishing up, but all the spring sports starting, and then we have 9 sports going on at once. So it really is just a juggling act, and it varies throughout the year, but it's fun.
Yeah, chaos, but organized chaos.
Organized chaos.
Yeah. Okay, so as I mentioned during our first episode with Brian last week, this is kind of about like Find Your Summit, revolving around that idea. But we're just talking to people about how that applies to their lives. And I think that Find Your Summit ultimately encompasses 3 main parts, like being inspired and inspiring others, seeking adventure, and like setting high bars, and chasing worthwhile goals. So we'll cover all those components individually, but first I just want to know generally like how you interpret Find Your Summit and like what that might mean to your life.
For me, it comes down to peace. I think a sense of peace for me is something that I'm always seeking in whatever I'm doing, personally, professionally. And it's hard to really describe. It's more of just a feeling. It's just knowing, when you're making decisions that you're making the right decision. And oftentimes there are different pathways to make. You can make numerous decisions when you're figuring out where to go to college, or you're figuring out, what to eat for dinner, right? But like that sense of peace, that no matter you're at peace with yourself and knowing that the decision that you made is the right one for you. And so that's what I seek when you talk about sort of finding your summit. For me, in my mind, that means like having a sense of peace and purpose to whatever I'm doing.
That totally makes sense. I think that's something everyone should strive for big time. But another question I have kind of going along with that, what are you most proud of in your life?
What am I most proud of? I think my daughter. Being a father is really transforming. It's something that I looked forward to, and my wife Lauren and I just couldn't be more in love with our little girl Maisie. And it starts to give you perspective when you see the sacrifices that my parents made for myself and my siblings, and then you sort of look at your child now and sort of envision the future and understand that you're willing to do anything. And so that I think just being a dad just provides a whole different perspective, and it's a great one.
Yeah, that's something I obviously can't understand at all yet, but yeah, I love when parents talk about,
and being
especially new parents talk about like whole perspective changing when you finally start your family.
Yeah, sorry, I keep getting phone calls. No, I think being a girl dad too, which you can relate to a little bit. I think especially being a dad to a young girl, I think is just, it's great. It's awesome, and it's really important.
Yeah. All right, so I have a couple questions about, I'll come back to your family, but I have a couple questions about more like AB Davidson stuff. So you've been at Davidson for a few years now, and have already inspired a ton of athletes, myself included. So whether you view yourself as such or not, you clearly fill a large leadership role. And so have you always seen yourself as having strong leadership qualities, or is that something you kind of grew into?
I think it's a combination of both. I've been and you've heard me say this before, I really try to strike the balance between confidence and humility with everything that I do. I think I've always been a naturally confident person, but also understanding that, balancing that with humility, understanding, never forgetting where you came from, and understanding how hard you need to work in order to be successful has been really important for me. So I don't lack in confidence, and I'm very outspoken, very outgoing. And I feel like a part of that has made me naturally shift towards leadership. But it's a combination of that just people tend to gravitate towards me because I'm loud, right? But part of that also is necessarily, it's inherent, but it's also more just learning. And I think I've learned a lot and grown as a leader, especially in these last 2 years. Coming in, I mentioned before, developing that sense of shared ownership, developing a sense of psychological safety so that people can feel like they can speak their minds, that I have their back, developing a sense of a core set of values that people can latch onto, and a foundation that we can build upon. So for me, I think it's both. Part of it is I've always seen myself as a leader, and I've always seen myself as a developing leader, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to like think about in thinking of yourself as a leader. You can constantly grow and evolve, and like the situation you're leading is always changing, so it's important to change with it. Um, but kind of going back to the humility thing that you just mentioned, so you were a Davidson student and student athlete, um, but we're a walk-on onto the basketball team. So I've experienced this, and you've experienced this. When you aren't like the top recruit or the top performer on a team or the starter, it's sometimes hard to feel to find one's place and to feel like you're confident in your contributions all the time. Did you ever feel this way when you were on the basketball team, like kind of disposable or not as confident as you could have been? And so, like, how did you view your role on the Davidson basketball team?
Sure, absolutely. I made a choice to come to Davidson, walk on. I was really fortunate enough to get a full academic leadership scholarship, and so that was a big part of it. But I wanted to play, and coming from high school, and I had a solid high school career, scored over 1,000 points, whatever, and you want to play at the Division I level, and you come to Davidson, walk on, and you're playing with a lot of people that are a lot better than you.
Yeah,
And for the first 2 years, I really tried to settle in and figure out where I fit in. My junior year, I probably felt like I had the best opportunity, and we had the best team that I've ever played on.
yeah,
I mean, we went undefeated in conference, and I really thought about transferring. I did. It's something that, like, I wanted to play. I was like, I just wanted to play. I feel like I wasn't contributing enough, and I really struggled, personally, just not being a part of, in my mind, a big enough a part of the team and contributing in a way that I felt like was impactful. And it really sort of centered me. And you talk about humility, to sort of look at the big picture. And that's something I try to do now, even a ton, is just look at the big picture, take a step back and look at the full scope comprehensively, and realize where I was at Davidson, one of the best, not just liberal arts schools, one of the best schools in my mind in the country. Not
yeah,
perfect,
for sure.
best schools in the country. And getting an incredible education, being a part of a Division I program, and the opportunities and possibilities that I'd have once I left Davidson, whether I played 20 minutes a game or not, were going to be endless. And committing to that, and then also committing to humbling myself to accepting a role that, as a walk-on, wasn't as, in my mind, impactful on the court, but more so off the court, and really developing stronger relationships with my teammates and being a leader in the locker room. And that's what I really tried to focus on. And it worked. And I'm glad, obviously, I made the right decision by staying, and I wouldn't have traded anything, for the world for the experience that I had. Because you learn from that. Again, those moments of humility teach you a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, from what I've heard, you were a big role model just within the team and the teammates. Another question that did you overlapped with Steph, or you helped recruit Steph?
Yeah, I was a senior when he was a senior in high school, so my class recruited Steph. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was just curious about that. So it sounds like you were a role model on the team, um, and I would guess a role model at home too. So what's your how do you view your family role, like yourself as a role model at home versus a role model at work? Is it different?
Uh, no, I think it's different for my immediate family, and then like my parents and siblings. I kind of look at it like, if I talk about like my parents, I'm the oldest of three, and I have a younger brother who's 4 years younger, younger sister who's almost 10 years younger. And I kind of see myself in the middle as sort of the best of each of them. It's really weird. Like, my dad and my brother are really similar
Mm-hmm.
personality wise, and my mom and my sister are really similar, and I'm really split down in the middle.
Yeah.
And so I fit in the middle between my mom and dad, me, and then my siblings. So for me, I'm kind of the blended version of my family in that respect. Um, and then with my wife and our little one, Maisie, I think it's different. I just try to set an example now for how we want Maisie to be when she grows up, how we want her to live her life, and to really thrive, and not just put sort of boxes around her. So for me, it's just modeling what a good father is supposed to be, what good parents are supposed to be, but also, like, humanity, how, like what a good person is supposed to be, and having empathy and being able to care for people and think about others, you know, before yourself, and also to strive for excellence. I think it's just a number of different things, and understand. Like I never want her to realize like the question of what you want to be when you grow up.
Yeah.
Like it's more so just like for her, my hope is that she is the best version of herself, whatever that is. And so my goal is to model that, understanding that with all of our flaws, with all of our imperfections, and that we're every day trying to be the best version of ourselves. So I think it varies from, family context to family context.
Yeah, I love that. Um, you're definitely pretty inspiring within the family, at work. But my question is, who and what most greatly influences you? Like, who have you been inspired by?
I would say, first off, my parents. I look up to my parents a ton. They are, I wouldn't be where I'm at without them. They're both Jamaican immigrants, moved to New York when they were young, and that's where I was actually born. And just their example that they set, the sacrifices they made for me, I owe everything to them. So they're definitely who I look up to. And I've had a number of just really powerful, influential role models throughout my lifetime. I was a William Holt Terry Leadership Scholarship. Dean Terry was the former dean of students at Davidson. He passed away 5 years ago, and he was a really impactful person on my life. Again, both personally and professionally. Bob, Coach McKillop, he's Bob now, I guess, since I'm his boss. But Bob has always been hugely impactful on my life, just in terms of understanding that basketball was not just about what we did on court, but the lessons that we learned, we often translated off court as well, right? And so those are just two, people that I definitely look up to. I think as I've sort of learned and grown and read a lot, they're just people throughout history that I look up to. That I feel like I'm developing a lot of one of the cool things that has stemmed out of this moment and movement for racial justice and equality has been the establishment of a group of Black ADs that meet every single week. And so it's one of the best groups that I've been a part of. Every AD of color at the Division I level, we're having conversations every week. And that group for me has been really impactful. Just to see, again, my peers and peers that look like me, reflective and to learn and grow from them, and witness their successes, their struggles, ask questions. So for me, that group has been really impactful of late, in terms of being able to look up to people to really emulate in a lot of ways. So
Yeah, I didn't even realize that you guys had almost a support group, just like on a personal level, but also on a professional level. But that was something I wanted to touch on, was with the Black Lives Matter movement happening right now. Obviously, Davidson in the athletic department is a majority white department. But you've done an incredible job, especially within this movement, issuing calls to action for us, and basically leading this movement of inclusion within athletics. So is that something you guys have worked on together as, ADs of color, or how do you see yourself as leading this movement, and what are your goals for the coming year while keeping the momentum rolling with it?
yeah, it's a great question. The group of Black ADs has been really influential. It's just been really great to learn from them. Again, going through, a lot of them are at predominantly white institutions like at Davidson, and sort of going through similar situations. I think for me, we're only scratching the surface. So first off, I've only been here 2 years, but this is something that should have been a priority from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And what I say, unfortunately, sometimes it takes something to happen in order for something to happen. And for me, I reflect on the fact that this should have been a priority, and it wasn't, but now it is, and we're making the most of it moving forward. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's understanding that because it's a priority, I keep mentioning shared ownership. Everybody needs to be involved and on board in some form or fashion. And so why you say sort of I'm leading it, in a lot of ways, I'm helping to facilitate it. And
Yeah.
there's some things that we're trying to do at the administrative level that we want everybody to be involved in. There's some things that we're charging at the team level that we want student athletes to really lead, and holding coaches accountable to that, holding what they're doing, holding them accountable to with performance metrics around that call to action. I think we're looking at everything from implicit bias or cultural competency training to, again, the call to action around education culture and community outreach, to voter education platforms, to really just having, potentially an athletes of a group for athletes of color. And the biggest thing is sustainability and accountability, right? Like, this is a moment, and in order to make it a movement, you have to ground it in your values, ground it in your foundation. And so when the next George Floyd happens, it didn't even take, it already happened. It took 3 days, and then Rayshard Brooks gets killed, right? And then everybody's scrambling to figure out what to do. But when you ground it in your values and in your foundation, you're not scrambling to figure out what to do because you're already doing the work. And so that's my goal, is to shepherd Davidson athletics in a space where all of our teams, all of our coaches, all of our administrators are doing the work, educating themselves, not leaning just upon people of color to do it, but educating themselves, working as a team to change their own cultures. And there are cultures that need to be changed drastically, and facing that head on, and facing that uncomfortable truth and doing the work. And then again, how you make it sustainable is, it's just not doing certain things and then just sort of following up. Like, there's a lot of great work that's being done at Davidson, and it's being done by people of color and a small amount of white people. And the people that should be involved in that good work are not involved in it. And we don't recreate the wheel. Things are there, programs are there, initiatives are there, workshops are there, speakers are there, like, groups are there, and it's tapping into that. And then when you start doing the work, something else happens and you're not scrambling, oh my gosh, what do we do? You're already doing it, right? And so that's the goal, is to make it more than a movement, than a moment, make it a movement, have accountability, have sustainability, and have real action steps, and holding people to that. So that's that, and people need to want to do that, and that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah, I think it's a question of, you've got the framework, but how do you integrate the framework and really nail it home and have people fully involved within it? It's a difficult challenge, but it's one that needs to be addressed for sure. So besides the Black Lives Matter movement at Davidson, though, being a recent focus and something that I imagine you've been working hard on integrating right now, 2020 has also hit us pretty hard with the COVID disaster, which has particularly far-reaching implications for college athletics. Davidson has announced that its students are returning in the fall, but how do you lead an athletic department with potentially limited or no sports?
It's a great question. It's something we're facing right now, because you have to be prepared for every possibility and contingency. And that's what we're trying to do. And I really credit President Quillen, because it's really hard. I think you have to look at it, again, I talk about big picture. The smartest thing to do, probably, right, in terms to eliminate risk, is not to come back and not to play sports. That is clear. And by making the decision to come back in part, right, come back with all the specific guidelines, and to potentially play sports, there's a risk. You're saying that there's a trade-off, a value trade-off, and it's a risk. And if you're willing to take that risk, then you have to do everything you can to mitigate risk. And it's really, it's going to be hard. It's asking a lot of people to trust, to do the right thing, to think of others before themselves.
Yeah.
And that's not an inherently human thing. And so, but it's a lot easier potentially to think about doing this at Davidson than it is the University of Texas.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think again, an institution built on community, you have to see other people's perspectives. I see where people are coming from that are like, why are you coming back? What are you doing? And honestly, the way that things are trending in the country right now, who knows? We may have to pivot and change things again completely, right? That's just the reality. But you commit to a course of action and you try to do everything that you possibly can, understanding that it's not always equal, it's not always equity, it's not always fair, but you're just trying to do what's right. And you try to account for like everybody's perspectives as much as possible. The biggest thing is trust, is a social compact. And that's the biggest thing. And I'm really going to be asking that a lot of our scholar athletes in this space, if they're potentially competing, understanding that it's a risk and that they need to be leaders on the forefront in terms of understanding the guidelines in place, understanding the risk to the greater community, understanding that you are going to need to be better. We're going to need you to be better. We're going to need you to lead. We're going to need you to social distance. We're going to need you to self-isolate if and when you come back from trips. We're going to need you like not to do what you did before, right? Socially on Fridays and Saturdays on the weekends. Like it's different. In order to have the privilege to potentially play athletics, you're going to have to lead and you're going to have to not put yourself first and put others first. And then the campus hopefully will follow. It's not easy. It's not something that is going to take, it's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to be a process for scholar athletes, for staff, administration, faculty, everybody's in this together. And it's not perfect. There is no perfect, there is no perfect solution, but within the framework we're creating, we're just trying to do our best. And that's what I'm committed to. That's what we're committed to for sure.
Yeah, I think it's going to require another level of prioritizing sports above your social life. Basically, one of the cool things about Davidson is that you can be involved in a lot of other things as well as being a student athlete. And I think understanding that it's not just about yourself and it's about your team and other athletes and your commitment to your college and your athletics is important, because like you said, you're not going to be able to just be out on Friday or Saturday night and then return in the interest of keeping others safe as well as yourself. But do you think there's anything from your past that has prepared you to deal with this? Or has the COVID situation been like full trial and error, fly by the coat undertaking?
COVID is new. This is a once in a hopefully knock on wood century issue. Spending 10 years with the NBA, I have, especially in international basketball operations, I think, and working through just large events and programs and initiatives, it's stressful. I think it's really difficult, especially when you're overseas and having to navigate multiple things at one time.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I learned a lot through that experience. And that's what we're doing right now. We're navigating COVID. We're navigating how to get back safely. We're navigating social justice and the need for racial justice and equality. Like we're navigating a number of things at one time. Yeah. And so that's not easy, but understanding you just have to take things one day at a time. Today's Friday. Monday could be different. We could be in a different space.
Yeah.
Accepting that there's no certainty within uncertainty, right? Like we're not making absolutist decisions. And so being able to accept that people need structure, people need clarity, and people need to be okay with not having that right now, right? Like that's just the way that they are. And so adaptability and flexibility are key. And so I think my time previously kind of with the NBA helped me frame that perspective for this time. And I'm just trying to lean on that as much as possible and lean on the people we have on staff and lean on each other and understand that we're all in this together.
Has that been difficult for you? Are you more of a go with the flow oriented person, or are you someone who really likes the structure of like concrete goals?
I'm a mix of both. I'm a planner. I like having things mapped out. My calendar is structured to a T. Yeah. But I've learned that you need to be flexible. You need to be adaptable. You need to change on a dime, stop on a dime and change things and understand that there are times where you can really be proactive, and there are times when you have to be reactive, and just balancing those are critical. So you just try to blend yourself with both perspectives.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's a question where like obviously everyone's a little bit of both. I think. Okay, final question on kind of goals. For me, Davidson was kind of always part of my story at some level. I knew from a young age that I wanted to go to Davidson. I come from a big Davidson family. But what about you? Why Davidson when you originally chose Davidson, and why did you choose to come back?
Davidson, I just fell in love with it when I visited. I fell in love with the campus, the people, just the opportunity. Again, having a full tuition scholarship didn't hurt. It just,
Yeah.
again, it was a great opportunity, and you started doing more research, and you're like, Davidson's a really incredible school. And so I just, again, you talk about that piece and, you know, choosing a college, and you have all these options, and you just felt a sense of peace. And so that's why I chose Davidson. And again, it was the right decision. I keep saying Davidson's an incredible place, but it's far from perfect. And a lot of what we're dealing with right now is that audit, that reckoning, to understand that Davidson needs to become the best version of itself, and it has a long way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Which leads me to the decision to come back, right? So Davidson had such an impact on me, and I felt like to be able to come back and serve in this capacity and have an even greater disproportionate impact on those coming, you know, that came after me, like yourself, is something that I couldn't turn down. Again, I felt like I would only be an AD. I'm only going to be an AD at Davidson. I'm not looking to go anywhere else. This place helped mold me in a lot of ways, and I want to be able to return that back tenfold. And so that, plus the ability to help Davidson athletics contribute to being the best version of itself as well, is what really enticed me to come back.
Yeah. Um, yeah, Davidson is an incredible community, you're right, but again, very far to go yet with the culture of Davidson and how we treat each other. Yeah, so obviously goal, continue to integrate that into Davidson culture. I want to talk a little bit about adventures before we finish up. So Finder Summit is about pursuing all types of adventure, whatever that looks like for each individual person. You were a Watson Fellow post-Davidson and got to travel the world a little bit, studying basketball in different cultures. Do you consider that to be kind of your greatest adventure you've experienced in your life? Or you mentioned Maisie, your daughter, earlier. I'm sure that that's been a roller coaster, but a great one. What do you think is your biggest adventure?
Being a dad is number one. The Watson for me was a huge launching pad. That experience changed my life in so many impactful ways. You know, you're thrust into a year-long adventure where you can't come home. You're in cultures that, you know, you're in Japan where you don't speak the language. You're in Argentina where you speak the language, but again, it's still a different experience. You're in South Africa where sometimes you're seen as a local, a native, just because of the color of your skin. And it's one of the most powerful and challenging experiences you've ever been in. And then you're in, you know, Italy. And so that for me just pushed me out of my comfort zone and really helped me embrace the power of travel, the power of understanding people in different cultures, and how that exposure helps you, should and could help you develop as a person. It just really gives you perspective. And so that for me is definitely, again, outside of being a dad, one of my greatest adventures.
Did you travel a lot as a child?
Yeah, not a ton internationally. My parents were really good about, as much as they could, every summer, family vacation, packing up our minivan and going somewhere, right? Whether it's Virginia Beach or Florida where my grandmother lived. So we traveled a lot domestically, not a ton internationally. That really started much more so when I got older, got to Davidson, obviously on the Watson, and then when I joined the MBA and traveled to 30 countries in 10 years, then the travel really started.
In what ways do you think experiencing other international cultures has shaped the way you envision the culture that you want to inspire within Davidson athletics and Davidson culture as a whole?
Yeah, no, it's just all encompassing. You want to be, diversity brings strength, and diversity brings like fulfillment, right? You talk about being the best version of yourself. Like you're not the best version of yourself if you're not a diverse and inclusive space.
Yeah.
And so that's understanding that, and I learned that a lot from just traveling the world, and just seeing the value of different perspectives and different people. And it really is a beautiful thing. And that's kind of what we need to strive for in a lot of ways, and embracing that to its fullest.
Yeah, of course. So, you know, at home and in the professional place, working towards inclusion. But what's the big 2020 adventure look like for you? Do you have one?
Get, you know, professionally, it's getting back and helping Davidson come back safe and in a great space through these challenges, and also embracing the challenge of living with and addressing its its past and pushing for more racial and social justice and equality. Personally, it's hopefully this quarantine and the COVID piece doesn't last too long, and hopefully we're able to move through this sooner rather than later. But it's really staying sane and figuring out ways to adjust to this new normal, I think.
Yeah.
Personally as a family and doing our part. Like, people have to do their part. And that's the only way this is going to get better. So wear a mask and social distance.
Wear masks. Wear your mask everywhere. All right, thank you for talking to me. I have a couple rapid fire questions here to end with that'll hopefully reveal a couple other random things about yourself that we didn't really cover before we finish up. Okay, so first, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Hot or iced?
Hot or ice? Oh, hot.
Okay, cool. Definitely the mood. Fill in the blank. Happiness is?
Peace. Like I said, happiness is peace.
Playlists or podcasts?
Playlist, although I am getting more into podcasts.
Yeah, me too. I have a commute. I live in Charlotte and drive up to Davidson every day. So many podcasts I've listened to. What's the most recent book you read?
What was the most recent book? I think it was the newest Tom Clancy book, Jack Ryan novel. And before that was Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Water Dancer.
Oh, nice. Okay. AD, what's your favorite sport to watch?
All of them.
Okay. Good answer. But with that, what's the most memorable sporting event you've attended?
Oh, man. Most memorable sporting event. Honestly, when I was with the NBA, I was in Australia for a basketball event, and we went to an Aussie Rules football grand final. And Aussie Rules football is this weird combination of football, soccer, and ultimate frisbee. And we went to it was like the Super Bowl of Aussie Rules football in Melbourne. And it was the most wild experience I've ever been to. I had no idea what was going on, but it was a full-on party, and it was awesome.
I love that. Okay, you were a poli-sci major at Davidson. If you were a Davidson student today, what would you still major poli-sci? What would you major in?
Yes, poli-sci and potentially minor in anthropology. I minored in Spanish.
Okay, cool. What would be the title of your autobiography?
The Kid Who Thought He Was Batman.
I feel like there's more to unpack there, but Okay, final question. Words to live by.
Oh, words to live by. Oof. Right now, the words to live by are pick a side, right or wrong.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah, establish who you are, what side of the line you want to be on. Yeah, be human, express your humanity. All right, well, thank you for chatting. This has been great. We'll be up on IGTV for anyone who tuned in late or anything like that. Reminders, next week we're meeting with Robert Page. He is a guy who loves Summit, does a lot of outdoor skiing, stuff like that. But yeah, thanks. We're supporting the Loveland Foundation for Give Back Fridays this week. Awesome foundation that supports women of color with therapy and mental health support. So really cool foundation. Yeah, so any sales today and any online sales Friday through Sunday will go towards that. So yeah, thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Olivia.
It was good talking to you. Bye.
Bye.